Have you ever witnessed a moment so pure, so unexpectedly hilarious, that it made you believe in the magic of everyday life? This is one of those stories. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen windows, casting warm golden rectangles across the hardwood floor. In the heart of the cozy living room, where toys scattered like colorful confetti and the scent of breakfast still lingered in the air, 2-year-old Emma stood with her tiny hands planted firmly on her hips. Her blonde hair was pulled into a slightly lopsided ponytail, courtesy of her mother's rushed morning routine, and her blue denim overalls matched the determination blazing in her bright eyes. Before her sat Marmalade. Marmalade was not just any cat. He was a magnificent orange tabby with fur the color of autumn leaves and a personality that could only be described as unapologetically mischievous. At 8 years old, he'd lived in this house long before Emma's first cry echoed through its walls, and he'd made it abundantly clear from day one that he was not about to surrender his throne to some tiny, squealing human. But something had changed over the past 2 years, something neither Marmalade nor Emma's parents could have predicted. They had become inseparable. Well, inseparable in the way that a toddler and a cat could be, which meant Marmalade tolerated Emma's enthusiastic hugs, her attempts to dress him in doll clothes, and her tendency to use him as a furry pillow during cartoon time. In return, Emma had appointed herself as Marmalade's personal guardian, defender, and, as of this particular morning, his disciplinarian. "Bad kitty!" Emma's voice rang out with all the authority a 2-year-old could muster, which, truth be told, sounded more adorable than intimidating. Her chubby finger pointed directly at Marmalade's whiskered face. "Very, very bad!" Marmalade blinked slowly, his green eyes holding that trademark feline expression of supreme indifference mixed with mild curiosity. His tail swished once against the floor, a metronome of patience. Emma's mother, Sarah, paused in the kitchen doorway, dish towel in hand, trying desperately not to laugh. She'd been washing the breakfast dishes when she heard her daughter's serious tone. Now, watching the scene unfold, she pulled out her phone. This was definitely a moment worth capturing. "Bad, bad, bad!" Emma continued, her voice rising with each repetition. She took a wobbly step closer to Marmalade, her white socks creating a soft shuffling sound against the floor. "You know what you did!" The accusation hung in the air like a judge's verdict. But here's the thing. Marmalade had absolutely no idea what he'd done. Or, rather, he had no idea which of the many questionable things he'd done that morning was currently under investigation. Had it been when he'd knocked over the potted plant in the hallway, sending soil cascading across the floor like a miniature avalanche? Or perhaps when he'd stolen a piece of bacon right off Emma's father's plate during breakfast, a heist executed with such precision that the family's golden retriever, Biscuit, was initially blamed. Maybe it was the incident involving the toilet paper roll, which he'd gleefully unraveled throughout the entire upstairs bathroom, creating what looked like a paper snowstorm. No. It was none of these things. The crime in question was far more serious in Emma's eyes. "You ate my cookie!" Emma declared, and suddenly the mystery was solved. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a laugh. The cookie, of course. Earlier that morning, Emma had been given a special treat, a chocolate chip cookie from the batch Sarah had baked the night before. It was a rare mid-morning indulgence, granted only because Emma had been so good during her doctor's appointment the day before. The toddler had placed her precious cookie on the coffee table right next to her favorite stuffed bunny while she'd run to get her sippy cup from the kitchen. It had taken exactly 45 seconds for Marmalade to strike.
When Emma returned, cup in hand and ready to enjoy her treat, she'd found only crumbs. Marmalade had been sitting nearby, looking exceedingly pleased with himself, a telltale chocolate smudge on his orange chin. The betrayal had cut deep. Now, nearly an hour later, Emma had finally cornered the culprit. She'd been following Marmalade around the house, waiting for the perfect moment to deliver her lecture. And that moment was now. "That was my cookie," Emma continued, her voice wavering between indignation and something that sounded suspiciously like heartbreak. "Mommy baked it for me, not for you." Marmalade's whiskers twitched. If cats could shrug, he would have. Emma crouched down, bringing herself to eye level with the cat. Her small face was scrunched up in the most serious expression a toddler could create. Eyebrows furrowed, lips pursed, nose slightly wrinkled. She looked like a miniature CEO about to fire an underperforming employee. "You need to say sorry," she instructed, holding up one finger as if making a very important point. "Say sorry right now." Marmalade responded with a slow, deliberate yawn, revealing all his teeth and a pink tongue that curled like a ribbon. "Marmalade!" Emma gasped, shocked at this display of disrespect. "That's not nice!" Sarah, still filming from the kitchen, bit her lip to keep from laughing out loud. Her daughter's commitment to this intervention was both hilarious and touching. Emma had clearly absorbed every parenting technique she'd ever witnessed, and now she was deploying them with the seriousness of a seasoned professional. "You need a timeout," Emma announced, nodding to herself as if this was the obvious next step. She pointed toward the corner near the bookshelf. "Go sit there and think about what you did." Marmalade, of course, had no intention of going anywhere. Instead, he did something that completely changed the trajectory of this disciplinary session. He reached out one soft orange paw and gently placed it on Emma's knee. The gesture was so unexpected, so tender, that Emma froze.
Marmalade's green eyes looked up at her, and for a moment something passed between them, an understanding that transcended words, species, and stolen cookies. The cat, who'd spent 8 years doing exactly as he pleased, seemed to recognize that he'd genuinely upset his tiny companion. He meowed. It was a soft, questioning sound, almost apologetic. Emma's stern expression began to crack. Her bottom lip quivered slightly. The righteous anger that had fueled her confrontation was melting away, replaced by the pure, uncomplicated love that only a 2-year-old can feel. "You're sorry?" she asked quietly, her voice small and hopeful. Marmalade meowed again and rubbed his head against her hand, a peace offering wrapped in fur and purrs. That was all it took. Emma's face broke into a radiant smile, the kind that made her eyes crinkle and her dimples appear. She threw her arms around Marmalade's neck, pulling him into a hug that was probably too tight, but filled with forgiveness nonetheless. "I forgive you," she whispered into his orange fur, "but no more stealing." Marmalade endured the embrace with remarkable patience, his tail curling around Emma's wrist like a furry bracelet. When she finally released him, he didn't run away as expected. Instead, he stayed close, rubbing his body against her legs in figure eights, purring loud enough for Sarah to hear from across the room. Emma giggled, the sound like wind chimes in a summer breeze.
Her earlier distress was completely forgotten, replaced by joy at her cat's affection. "Mommy," Emma called out, turning toward the kitchen with excitement. "Marmalade said sorry. He's a good kitty now." Sarah emerged from her hiding spot, phone still recording. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you for using your words." Emma beamed at the praise, then looked back down at Marmalade. "Can he have a cookie too? A cat cookie?" Sarah laughed. "How about I get him some cat treats instead?" "Okay," Emma agreed enthusiastically. Then, with the lightning-fast subject changes typical of toddlers, she announced, "I'm going to show him my dolls now. Come on, Marmalade." She toddled off toward her toy corner. And, to everyone's surprise, Marmalade followed. His tail was held high, a flag of contentment, as he trailed after his tiny human.
Sarah watched them go, her heart swelling with a mixture of amusement and tenderness. She'd worried during her pregnancy about how Marmalade would adjust to a baby in the house. He'd been the center of attention for so long, the undisputed king of the household. But somehow, in ways that couldn't be predicted or planned, the grumpy orange cat had become Emma's most loyal companion. Sure, he still stole food, he still knocked things off counters with deliberate precision, he still claimed the best spots on the furniture and gave Sarah's husband, Michael, judgmental looks whenever he dared to sit in his chair. But with Emma, he was gentle, patient, present. As Sarah returned to the kitchen, she could hear Emma's voice from the living room, narrating some elaborate story to Marmalade about a princess and a dragon. The cat's answering purrs provided a steady baseline to Emma's animated storytelling. Later that evening, when Michael came home from work, Sarah showed him the video she'd captured. They watched together as their daughter scolded their cat with such earnest seriousness, only to melt into forgiveness moments later. They laughed until tears rolled down their cheeks, re-watching the moment when Marmalade's paw touched Emma's knee. "She's going to be a great big sister someday," Michael said thoughtfully, pulling Sarah close. Sarah nodded, resting her head on his shoulder. "Or a lawyer. Did you hear that closing argument?" They laughed again, but beneath the humor was something deeper, a recognition of how these small, everyday moments were actually extraordinary. How the relationship between a stubborn cat and a determined toddler had become one of the most beautiful things in their lives. That night, as Sarah tucked Emma into bed, she asked, "Did you have a good day, sweetheart?" Emma nodded sleepily, clutching her stuffed bunny. "Marmalade was bad, but then he was good again." "That's right," Sarah agreed, smoothing her daughter's hair. "Everyone makes mistakes, don't they?" "Uh-huh, but you have to say sorry." Emma's eyes were already closing, sleep pulling her under like a gentle tide. Sarah kissed her forehead and turned off the light, leaving only the nightlight glowing softly in the corner. As she pulled the door nearly closed, she glanced back one more time. There, curled up at the foot of Emma's bed, in his favorite spot, was Marmalade. He jumped up after Emma had fallen asleep, as he did every night, assuming his position as guardian and friend. His orange fur glowed in the nightlight's soft illumination, and his steady purring filled the quiet room like a lullaby. Sarah smiled and left them to their dreams. The bond between children and their pets is something truly special, a connection built on unconditional love, instant forgiveness, and yes, the occasional stolen cookie. If this story touched your heart or made you smile, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your own funny pet stories in the comments below. And remember, life's too short to hold grudges, especially over cookies. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our heartwarming stories, and join our community of pet lovers who know that sometimes the smallest moments create the biggest memories.